Well, Super Tuesday is upon us with over 1,300 delegates up for grabs across 14 states. And Yahoo Finance's Zahn just got back from Massachusetts, and he joins us now in studio. Of course, Massachusetts is the home of Senator Elizabeth Warren. But Bernie Sanders is nipping at her heels here, potentially going to be able to steal the state away from her. What did you see when you were out there?
Yeah, I mean, what's so interesting about Massachusetts is that year in and year out, Gallup polls find it to be the most liberal state in the country. And they know both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. It's her state, of course, but he's also from neighboring Vermont and has been an entity in that area for decades.
Yeah.
So the two of them are contesting for the sort of front runner as the progressive candidate to take on Biden. And this state is the perfect proxy as the most liberal state to decide which one should be that top runner.
So it's an important state, is what we're talking about here. And it's an important battleground for Senator Elizabeth Warren as well. So, I mean, who's going to take it then? That's the question.
Yeah, and I was out there over the weekend and I spoke to supporters both of Warren and of Sanders in Massachusetts to find out from them who they think should be the mantle holder for that progressive movement in this race. Massachusetts has emerged as a key battleground between the two most progressive candidates in the race, current leader Bernie Sanders and hometown favorite Senator Elizabeth Warren. Democratic voters here prioritize health care and climate change. But above all, many think each issue comes down to a fundamental struggle between powerful interests and everyday people. Both Warren and Sanders have built their careers on precisely that message. Ahead of Super Tuesday, Sanders made weekend stops in Boston and Springfield, where supporters say they trust his long record of fighting for social justice. Ed Collins, a retired 74-year-old resident of Springfield who likes both candidates, considers Sanders slightly more liberal.
For me, the decision was, did I have enough of a reason to move away from Bernie and support Elizabeth, who I dearly love and have campaigned for twice for Senate. But I felt I should stay with Bernie. He's a little bit closer to my political values and beliefs as a social democrat.
But supporters of Warren say her willingness to soften some hardline stances and appeal to moderates is exactly what makes her a better candidate. House member Jim McGovern, who represents central Massachusetts, agrees.
And I think what Elizabeth is doing is understanding that politics is about addition. Her views haven't changed, but she understands that in order to win the presidency, it can't just be the liberal base that comes on board. We're going to have to, broaden our coalition here. The goal here is to defeat Donald Trump.
There are 91 pledged delegates up for grabs in Massachusetts. Perhaps more importantly, liberal voters here will tell the nation who should go toe-to-toe with moderate frontrunner Joe Biden for the nomination.
Yes, I mean, that's the interesting thing here, too, is that you were in Springfield, Mass. Of course, Massachusetts does have a very wide swath of different cultures across the state. I went to school in Cambridge, so I experienced some of that. But Max, I mean, when you're out there talking to people here, obviously they're both very progressive, so it's hard to really kind of choose which issue is going to be one that might draw you away from Sanders to vote for a Warren. It seems like you're essentially splitting hairs at that point.
Absolutely. And, at a rally, I was there for Bernie Sanders. He's got a hop in his step now that he's been getting a lot of delegates and been winning a lot of states. And you hear these supporters. These are the true believers who've been with him for a long time out here. We're talking, multicolored beanie hats, plaid shirts. Bella Fleck was playing the banjo before Sanders spoke. And
seems on brand.
And they say that his commitment on these issues for decades and his willingness to identify as democratic socialist makes them trust him, even if the policy differences between him and Warren are maybe splitting hairs.
Yep.
That when they're in office, you can't go back from calling yourself a socialist, even under the pressures of Washington, D.C. And with Warren, they like Warren. A lot of them have volunteered for her statewide races for the Senate. But when it comes to being in D.C., under the pressure of special interests, under the pressure of bipartisanship, they just trust Sanders more.
Yeah, longer record, and really right now, with fewer and fewer moderates, now Biden really the strong moderate to go up against here, it seems like you got to pick one.
Yeah, and I think Sanders showing in all the debates versus Biden would give, voters a little bit more confidence in backing him versus Warren. And to your point, I remember the last election, how sincere he seemed. So whether you agree with him or disagree with him, I think it was very hard to find people that say this guy does not believe what he says. He does, and perhaps that authenticity is what's helping him right now.
And not only, I mean, how much the establishment, too, support and not support of
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, we remarked about how progressive Massachusetts tends to be, but we do have to acknowledge that it is still one of those East Coast, states that has a long pedigree of business interests as well. And I'm wondering, do you think Biden or Bloomberg actually can maybe take some share away from the more liberal candidates like Sanders and Warren?
It's interesting. It is a two-way race between the two of them at the top, but whether one of them can get to that 15% threshold, I think will be a fascinating question if they can get a few delegates out of Massachusetts. Yeah. And I actually ran into a canvasser for Biden out there while I was in Springfield who said, listen, we have a ground game here. It's not like Biden doesn't exist here in Massachusetts and here in Springfield.
Yeah, we'll see if he can reach that threshold. Max Zahn bringing us the latest from Massachusetts. And, of course, our last reminder to stay tuned to Yahoo Finance's special live coverage of Super Tuesday tomorrow, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Yahoo Finance. Hey investors, Zack Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.